Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Brown from Research Triangle High School, and the purpose of this presentation is to give you a few hints and tips on writing the synthesis essay for the AP Language and Composition exam. Now remember, the synthesis exam is the one where you're going to ask to combine and make something new out of lots of different parts. That's what the synthesis part means. So the first thing you're going to do is look at all of the parts that they give you. So you're going to have samples from nonfiction, fiction, poetry, prose. You may have some visual text like charts and graphs or maps or photographs. And the first thing you want to do is read through all of that. Now you have to move quickly, so you read with a pen in your hand and you be as active as you can. So you're going to annotate and note things as you read, underline some of the main ideas. And one thing that might help, and you can kind of experiment with this in class and see if you think it's an effective technique for you, is to consider on each source just writing like a one-sentence sort of summary or note for you. Because you may find that after 6 or 7 sources, you're like, wait, what was that one about with this girl was saying this thing? So you may want to just put a little note at the top of each one to kind of help you quickly remember what they are when you're ready to organize your actual response. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is decide what your position is going to be. Now, you want to actually take a stand on this and kind of do this quickly. Don't spend a lot of time fretting and hee-haw and say, well, on one hand, it might be this, and the other hand, it might be that. It's like, that's great. You may have time to have some of those conversations in your essay, but remember, you have to move quickly. So sort of take a position and then look at whether or not you want to affirm what the prompt is telling you, if you're going to refute it, or if you're going to qualify it a little bit. And sometimes you have to form your own opinion from a more abstract concept. Sometimes it may not give you the prompt may not give you a statement and ask you to agree or disagree with that statement. It may give you a general idea and say, hey, what do you think about this? Can you define this more abstract term? It might be something about courage, or like the one that we're going to be working on about what a memorial is for. So you may have to very quickly kind of form your own opinion on this. Be sure that if you qualify your argument, that you don't come out sounding like you couldn't make up your mind. You don't want to go back and say, well, on the one hand this, on the one hand that. You want to show that you're a mature person who can organize their thoughts, and you can say that most of the time I would feel this way, but you can also consider this other viewpoint or in these other circumstances or situations. So don't use the qualification as a chance to just kind of be wimpy about your position. And then you're going to go ahead and write your thesis statement, just one single sentence, standalone, that says what you believe is true about this issue. So sort of nutshell your ideas into one single sentence, and this is going to help you when you start to look for your evidence to support your thesis in the next step. Now, as you consider your thesis, you're going to want to think about your tone. Like, what is your approach to this topic going to be? Most students fall into the trap of thinking they have to be as academic and scholarly as possible, but really, you can make this as interesting and as thoughtful and as entertaining for your reader as you want. And sometimes having a very specific tone shows good control of language and is the mark of a mature writer. So you do want to match your tone to the topic. If it's asking something about, how can we prevent the horrors of war? You probably aren't going to answer that in kind of, writing little limericks and things. But if you can, you want to make it at the beginning. Are you going to be sort of thoughtful about this? You're going to be very, very strict about it. Can you be sort of witty? Is there a place in this to be sort of a more lighthearted tone? But the thing is to deliberately choose it, and then from your very opening, where you're going to have your hook and your thesis, you want to make sure that you're maintaining that tone throughout the whole piece. Step 4 is where you're going to gather your evidence. Now, you've already read through the articles. You've made sort of a quick decision about what it is you're going to use as your approach. And then you're going to go back, and now you're looking for the things that are going to be your building blocks that are going to let you prove that what you are saying is true about this topic is indeed true. You want to find 3 or 4 quotes that support your point of view from some of the different sources that you're given. And then also find 1 or 2 quotes that you disagree with. And you say, well, Ms. Brown, why do I want to have something if I don't agree with it? Because there's 2 things you can do with a quote that's something that you disagree with. The first is that you can use it for refutation. You can say that magic word, although source A says this one thing, source B and C say this, and I also think this is true. The other thing that you can do with a quote that you disagree with is use it as a concession. You can say, although source C brings this up in, and I can see that's a valid point, but I still think it's outweighed by source, C, D, or D, F, and E, however that breaks down. So you do want to find a couple of quotes that will support your position, and then a couple of quotes that you can use to help argue against it. And this shows that you have had a conversation with these different texts, that you've really looked at the range of opinions on the particular issue. And just a reminder, minimum, you must use 3 from at least 3 different sources. Now, there's been a lot of talk in the AP circles about whether or not it's better to use more sources. Like if there's 7 pieces, should you use something from each one? Are you in trouble if you only use 3? Is 3 like a minimum? Well, 3 is a minimum, but if you are crafting an essay that's going to make your AP reader fall in love, it does not matter how many sources that you pulled from, as long as you chose from at least 3. Most readers would rather see a well-constructed argument that uses sources from just 3 pieces than to see something that tries to grab in something from 7 different sources and is juggling them all in the air and it's all convoluted. Don't do that. So you want to find a couple of sources that will help you, but don't get caught up in having to have something from every single source. The main thing is to find enough support to make your thesis stand up. Now, the next thing that you can do with the synthesis essay, and sometimes you don't really have time for this, so I'm going to talk about some cautionary tales, but you can consider your own personal evidence. Now, this is apart from the quotes that you're given. These are things that you can bring to the topic. It might be something personal that you have seen or experienced, or place that you visited. It could be something academic that you remember from history or from another class or something in science. It could be something literary that comes from a novel that you've read or something you saw, a character experience. Now, you want to use this with caution. Remember, your strongest supports in the synthesis essay and what you're being tested on is your ability to use the evidence from the sources and to cite the sources that they've given you. But you can also show some good original thinking and to show the evolution of the thesis that you've chosen by bringing in some of your own outside evidence as well. Just be careful that it doesn't turn into this whole little, backtrack about this one time at band camp, I did this thing, and this girl at the slumber party. Don't get into that kind of storytelling. But if there's information that you have from personal experience or from some other source throughout your education that can help support the point of view that you've chosen, it's okay to bring some of that in. Now, depending on your own style, some students like to do this organizing as they're getting the quotes together. But what you may want to do is sort of get all of your things together and then decide how you want to stack them up. Remember, your purpose is to prove your point, and you want to concede that there are other views, but then show how your view is stronger. So one way you can do this is to kind of have your sources talk to each other. You can start off and say, in source A, this happens, and in source B says this. You can also look at other organizational patterns. You can things like, what's the first point about your topic, and then say, well, source A says this about that, source B, source C says this thing, and then go on to the second point about the topic and show how the different sources either support each other or argue with each other. What you do want to do is kind of avoid that classic 5-paragraph essay. You add as many body paragraphs as you think you need to keep yourself organized. So you want to stay focused and use this use these pieces together. So have a plan to make sure that you stay on track, that you don't just end up kind of babbling like I'm doing a little bit right now. Sorry. So now you've gathered all your evidence, you know what your point's going to be, you have an idea of the order in which you want to say it. Now you start writing. You're going to write quickly, so you want to follow the roadmap that you've already decided. If you have a new concept or something that comes in, remember that the AP does consider this to be a draft. So if you have your perfect paragraph written down here and you've already written all of this other stuff, it is okay to just, draw an arrow and put that back up. So don't despair if you get to the very end and then say, oh, I have this new great idea. That's fine. Put it in and organize it. But just to keep your writing in line, go with the roadmap that you established. As you go along, cite your sources as you use them. So you're going to be using that in-text citation. And you can either do that by number. You can say according to source 1, or they might be by letter. According to source B, this thing happens, or so-and-so happens according to source D. Or you can cite them by the last name of the author. So according to Brown, we should write the essay in this order. You want to stay focused, but again, avoid that very workmanlike, formulaic 5-paragraph structure. It's like first thing, second thing, third thing. You want to kind of, again, build your argument. Use as many body paragraphs as you think you need to keep yourself organized. If you find that you're going on really long, you might need to chunk those ideas up. And remember, when you get to the end, you're going to be tying your conclusion back to your thesis. So go back to the hook, that interesting way that you grabbed them at the beginning, and to your thesis, and show how this evidence has all supported that. And now your whole piece is standing on a solid foundation with lots of good support. When you get to the end, if you have time, you can go back and proofread and edit as time allows. Remember that the AP, again, I know I say this over and over again, considers this a draft. There is no student who sits there where the reader is going to say, you know, I would have given this essay an 8, but they misspelled this one word, so I think that it drops back down to a 4. No, they look at the organized pattern of your writing and your evidence of thought. Like, how does this piece of writing show your ability to think about this topic and then to support and argue with evidence your point of view? So proofing is great. Go back and catch those mistakes, make those changes, but only if you have time. Get it on the paper first, and then you can think about organizing it a little bit more, or cleaning it up and making it all pretty and tied up in a bow if you have time to do that. Now, in class, we're going to continue taking a look at some exemplars. We're going to do some more practice of these and look at annotating a few more sources. So we'll see you back in class.